Hello, I'm Julie Zellman-Davis from the SEC's Office of the Advocate for Small Business Capital Formation. On June 18, 2019, the SEC issued a release requesting public comment on ways to simplify, harmonize, and improve the exempt offering framework for businesses and their investors. The release provides background about the capital raising exemptions that many entrepreneurs across the country are using to fund, grow, and scale their businesses. The exemptions provide an alternative to full registration with the SEC as a reporting or public company. The release discusses a wide range of ways that companies can raise capital using exemptions, a framework that our chairman Jay Clayton has described as complex and an elaborate patchwork. We want to break this down for you by briefly highlighting the topics covered. The release seeks input on whether changes should be made to improve our offering exemptions. I'm going to try to avoid using much regulatory jargon as I describe a few of the exemptions that the release discusses. Let's start with private offerings. The most frequently used offering exemption is the private placement exemption, specifically Rule 506B of Regulation D. In a nutshell, this exemption allows entrepreneurs to raise money from wealthier investors with whom they have a relationship, but without advertising or generally soliciting investors. Most friends and family, angel investor, venture capital, and private equity investments use this exemption. The release asks many questions about how well the Rule 506B exemption works. While private placement offerings cannot solicit investors over the internet, other types of exemptions do allow offerings over the internet. I'll highlight 3 different types of offerings from smallest to largest amounts raised. First, emerging businesses can use equity crowdfunding under regulation crowdfunding to offer securities over the internet through registered funding portals. Any investor can participate with limits on their investment amounts, and companies can raise up to about $1 million per year. Second, Regulation A allows offers and sales of up to $50 million of securities using a model similar to registration with the SEC, but with scaled and more flexible rules. Some people refer to this as a mini IPO. These offerings are often done over the internet. Any investor can participate, but there may be limits on the amount they can invest. Third, Rule 506C allows companies to raise unlimited amounts of money from wealthier investors using general solicitation and advertising, so these offerings can also happen over the internet. Companies must verify that any investor that buys their securities meets certain wealth or income standards. Let me pause to discuss the accredited investor definition. For individuals to be able to invest in certain exempt offerings, they must qualify based on their wealth or net income. Several market participants have suggested the Commission create additional methods of qualifying other than financial criteria. The release asks questions about whether there are additional factors we should consider, such as professional credentials. Some commenters have pointed out there may be gaps in the exemption framework, or that there are certain types of offerings that should be exempt but don't quite fit into any of the current exemptions. For example, should the Commission add a micro-offering exemption for smaller amounts of capital raised, such as under $250,000 or $500,000? Others have questioned whether we ought to change the rules for funds and pooled investment vehicles to facilitate retail investor participation in exempt offerings so that ordinary investors do not miss out on private companies' growth pre-IPO. I encourage you to look at the sections of the release that interest you. This video was produced by the SEC's Office of the Advocate for Small Business Capital Formation and is meant to provide only a very high-level summary of the harmonization concept release. The release itself provides more detail and an opportunity for you to comment on these and many more topics. The release can be found on www.sec.gov by clicking on the drop-down Regulation tab at the top of the page and selecting Rulemaking Index. We encourage you to share your feedback with the Commission. Check out our office's video on how to comment. You can send us a comment on any or all of the exemptions or other issues discussed in the release. Your comment does not have to be formal, lengthy, or prepared by legal experts. We want to hear from you and hope you will engage with the SEC by submitting a comment. Help shape the future of capital raising.